Today we're going to talk about the differences between piston and rod wear rings. So what I've got up here on the board, and you can kind of imagine, is on this side we've got sort of your piston groove, where you've got this piece of metal running inside of your cylinder. And on this side we've got kind of like your cylinder head, where the rod is going to be sliding in here. So if you know what a wear ring is, it sort of supports your moving piece of hardware here in the case of the piston and stops it from banging into the inside of your cylinder. So how are you going to get this super rigid, tough material wear ring to fit into its groove here when you've got this extra piece of metal, this lip, keeping it from falling off? You can't just bump it in and slide it over because you've got a larger diameter here. So what's the answer? You just cut it. There are three types of cuts: the butt, the step, and the angle cut. They're all essentially the same for the purposes of this discussion. Now, the same question over here: how are you going to get this rigid rod wear ring inside when you've got the larger diameter for the wear ring OD and the smaller diameter where you're going to have to allow the rod to slide through? The answer again is you just cut it. So what are the differences between these two? Are they interchangeable? The answer is no, because the fundamental difference here is that for the piston wear ring, you're going to want to stretch it and then allow it to collapse into its groove to eliminate this gap here as much as possible. Now, the opposite is true for the rod wear ring, because you're going to want to crumple it into a smaller diameter and allow it to spring and expand to that larger diameter. Let's go out to the shop and I'll show you. We're out here at the Mobile Hydraulics Training Center, where we train our salesmen and engineers how to rebuild hydraulic cylinders. What I've got here on the bench are two cylinder head glands, like you'd see on the back or front of a piston cylinder. And on the other side here, we've got two pistons. Now, what I'm going to show you is how to install the rod versus the piston wear ring on each of these. So, like we saw on the whiteboard, how do you get this larger diameter rigid wear ring through the lip into where it seats on the inside? Well, the answer is you crumple it up, put it through, and allow it to expand. And that's going to stay right where we want it, because it's forcing itself outwardly. The opposite is true over here on the piston. This time we don't want it to force itself out. That'll just cause it to flop out without any warning. Instead, we want it to kind of collapse inwardly. And that's why on the piston wear ring we have very little space initially. What we do is we pull it apart and allow it to collapse into its gland. And this is on there pretty tight, and it's not going to fall out during assembly.